Welcome to Pick Your Take, the film podcast where everyone's entitled to be wrong. I'm your host, Isaac Leggett.
And I'm also your host, Chris Deboulis. This week we'll be asking you, our combative audience members, to pick your take on the 2016 film Warcraft. And up front, because we did not do this in the first episode, spoilers. Sorry we didn't say spoilers in episode 1.
Yeah, this is a podcast that more or less talks about the entire film. So spoilers for 2016's Warcraft.
And in fact, if you hear us mention any film by name in this podcast, you can probably assume that we are about to spoil it. Maybe not in every case.
We'll show discretion with new things.
Well, You're right. We'll show discretion with new things. But this is a podcast where we're discussing movies, and we like to go into the content of film. And spoilers. So, Warcraft. From light comes darkness, and from darkness, light.
Oh, my word.
I really love that quote. I guess I'll be up front. I'm a big fan of this movie.
Yeah. You always have been since it came out. The structure of this podcast is that each week we're going to be picking our side on a movie that we disagree on, and this week I do not like this movie. This is not a very good movie, and I'm ready to talk about it.
And I respectfully disagree. I'm ready to talk about it, but should we get some some stats out of the way up front, or should we?
Yeah.
All right, we'll get the quick and boring stats. Not boring stats, but the quick stats. This film came out June 10th, 2016. It was released by, I think, majorly by Universal Pictures, but I think also bears mentioning Legendary Entertainment. Atlas was also involved in this, and then, of course, Blizzard Entertainment is the company behind the Warcraft video
All
game
things
that this
Warcraft,
is based on. Yeah. What is your relation with the video game Warcraft?
Oh, I don't think I've ever played it. My brother, who shout out, my brother, doubt he's going to be listening to this, but that'd be dope if he was. He played it some in high school. I think like Warcraft 3, though he probably wouldn't love that I said that. But he played it some, so I was kind of like adjacent to it. But we were also kind of both really coming of age during the time of World of Warcraft. Mm-hmm. That was such a kind of insane movement of just like this. I mean, I'm sure there had been massive online multiplayers like that before. I'm sure it wasn't like the first one, but I think on like a cultural level, it certainly reached a whole new height, right?
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say like your brother, he shouldn't at all, feel embarrassed for being a fan of this game. I mean, this game has grossed, I think it's like 11 billion in just lifetime revenue, which isn't just the one game; it's like the entire series of games.
The franchise.
I'm assuming that might even. I'm looking at the Wikipedia for the video game, and I think this is just the video game franchise that it's saying has made 11 billion in revenue. So it's huge. It is like Warcraft. I think of online games. I think of Doom, which is another movie which bears no mention. Well, actually bears some mention. Has some decent.
I used to like
moments.
that movie. I haven't seen that movie in a long time. But when I saw it in high school, I thought it was dope. I'm certain it sucks. I'm certain that Doom sucks.
There's like 3 moments of really hardcore, violent horror action sequences that makes you feel like, okay, this is actually a really good interpretation of this game. But it's only a few sequences. I don't think Dwayne the Rock Johnson, or just Dwayne Johnson, sorry. I don't think his performance is all that great. And Carl Urban, I think, has been better in things like Dread.
No, I think we should call it Dredder.
Dredder.
I think that Carl
Dredder
Urban
and Dread
has been Dredder. Okay, we're already way off topic.
But we're still in video game territory. Oh no, Dread is a comic.
Right.
Okay, back to video games. I also have never played Warcraft. I wasn't at all familiar with the lore or the characters, and apparently the characters in this movie are in the game, and they are in sort of like, I don't know if they're represented in the first game, but from what I've read, they're sort of like characters in kind of the early stories of kind of the Warcraft mythology.
Yeah, I think that the mythology is interesting, and I'm sure that we both kind of did a bit of a dive on it in researching this. But I also think it's kind of, I think at least when we're talking about the success or failings of this movie, I think it's going to be fun that maybe we don't have the deep connection to the game in which we are expecting the movie to be something. We are just taking the movie for what it is. And I think that that will ultimately help this discussion, because we did really look into a lot of the lore. So we're getting some of the bigger picture on it.
Yes, I think so. But yeah, so that's a little bit of background on, I guess, Blizzard Entertainment. To be honest, I didn't really look into what other video games they produce, but I'm sure they are very, very big in the video game world. But we're talking movies, so I'm going to move on to movies from here. So this movie, this Warcraft 2016 film, was directed by Duncan Jones, who, perhaps because his name is Duncan Jones, he doesn't want this to be known, but I believe he is the son of David Bowie. And
born Zoe Bowie.
Born Zoe Bowie. Oh, I didn't know that.
Born Zoe Bowie.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That's a dope name, but that would take away from his filmography, which I think is pretty great so far. Duncan Jones, the two other movies other than Warcraft that I have seen are Moon, which I've probably seen 2 or 3 times, and then Source Code, which I've probably watched 5 or 6 times. We've discussed we have a mutual love for Source Code.
When in the body of this episode, we're going to be talking plenty about Source Code and Moon.
It's true, and I haven't seen Mute. But that's the other film that he's made on Netflix that I need to see.
No, me neither, yeah.
The screenplay is written by Duncan Jones and Charles Leavitt, Charles Leavitt. Yeah, I'm assuming it's Leavitt. And he has written, I sort of looked through his filmography, and the screenplays that he's written that are of, I would say, of good merit are Blood Diamond, The Express, and In the Heart of the Sea at moments.
Yeah, he seems like a bit of like a journeyman studio screenwriter who gets brought in on drafts for stuff. And I mean that is no disregard. That is a deep, like powerful skill that only certain people have to do. So, you know, like good for him on that. Yeah.
And Blood Diamond, it seems like it gets forgotten a lot in the discussion, but when I watched it, it was really powerful, and I thought it was a great movie.
Yeah, I like Blood Diamond. I think that there's not much to it stylistically that I can latch onto.
In the directing choices, you mean? Or like in the...
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
I think in like a lot of the directing choices.
Fair enough.
I'm underwhelmed by... That's like Ed Zwick, right? Yeah, that guy's like kind of a bit of a...
Are you not a Glory fan?
Latching on to him. No, that's probably his best movie.
Okay. All right. I do love Glory.
Yeah, I'm not saying that he like makes bad movies. There's not much really to grasp onto a lot of the time with him.
Okay, interesting point. Okay, fair enough. I'll leave that at there.
Last Samurai, I don't know.
Oh, I haven't seen maybe enough of his his filmography, because I haven't seen Last Samurai actually. So okay, fair enough. Good.
Yeah. Right, and then this movie stars a huge pile of people.
Well, it's definitely. I would say this movie is an ensemble piece. Certainly.
Yeah.
Definitely an ensemble piece. I think that there's to me
maybe to its benefit. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a clear protagonist to me, which is funny because he's fourth billed in the movie, but I really do think that the character of Durotan is the protagonist of this story. It really feels like. But sorry, we'll go into just the stars.
Right. Well, yeah, it's a huge list. It's Travis Fimmel, Paula Patton, Ben Foster, Dominic Cooper, Toby Kebbell, Ben Schnetzer, Robert Kaczynski, Clancy Brown, love Clancy Brown, Daniel Wu, Ruth Nega, and Anna Galvin, I guess, are really the whole cast. And insanely a cameo from Glenn Close, which is one of the most bonkers things.
Were you aware of it when you saw it, or did you have to sort of...
No idea. I couldn't have imagined, honestly. I was so fascinated by that. It was clear they got her in like a green closet somewhere for like 2 hours.
Oh no, definitely. No, I mean it's a very quick cameo, but for some reason like that whole, well, I'll mention this right now, and then like we'll later when we get into it, we'll get into it. But that sequence for me is powerful for me. So her performance like is also just equally powerful. I don't know why. Like I really love the effects mixed with that moment in the script, mixed with just her performance. I really enjoy the sort of like atmosphere of that scene.
I was so distracted by it being Glenn Close that I don't remember anything that was said in that scene. If I'm being perfectly honest right now, I have no idea even what they were talking about in that scene because I was like, there's no fucking way that's Glenn Close.
It is.
It's all I could think about.
All right. So let's the basic synopsis of this movie. A young chieftain named Durotan, who leads a small tribe of warrior orcs, struggling to keep his people and family alive. His world is dead, thanks to a malicious, tyrannical sorcerer orc named Gul'dan, who wields a magic called the Fel, and now rules over Durotan and all his neighboring tribes. Gul'dan calls these tribes to a portal. All the clans, basically, he brings them together to this portal that's going to teleport them away from this dying world to the land of Azeroth. And Azeroth is a world that's populated by humans, elves, dwarves, and they're all living together in peace and harmony. But this tranquil existence is thrown into turmoil as multiple kingdoms are plagued by attacks from, quote, giant beasts. In the kingdom of Stormwind, the commander of the King's Royal Guard investigates a recent attack on one of his own garrisons. And there he discovers the dreaded mark of the Fel.
And I want to come right out and say that all of that is basically covered in the first 7 minutes of this movie.
Yep. It's the stage.
It is a lot.
It's the stage. It is, this movie moves. This movie is not really, but I don't know. I don't want to like start to come out with like what I enjoy about it before, but I guess really quickly, that is kind of one of the main reasons I think why I enjoy this movie is the pace at which the story is being told to you. I really just feel like this movie isn't, other than character backstories, this movie isn't establishing much. This movie is, Duncan Jones is just literally dropping you in it, and there's a lot of names and terms that are constantly being thrown out, and I think you just need a kind of like, to me, in my first viewing experience, the content was not fully absorbed, but the visual aspect, the visual way everything was presented, I knew who was who, I knew who to root for, and I was able to understand kind of like the simple side of the story without kind of really understanding an encyclopedia kind of like way, you know, like sort of knowing every character. And I honestly didn't know every character name until we were going to do this episode, and I had to learn all of them. Basically.
No, that's fair. But also, I think you're right that in terms of like, they waste very little time on the shoe leather and, you know, at least take the time to at least show what characters like want. Mm-hmm. You know, I would love to have more scenes of just like seeing people be people and like understanding any sort of exterior life any of these characters have. That would be delightful. Mm-hmm. But you're right that like whatever they're rushing through, they are rushing through just like a lot of the world building. Like there are so many proper nouns that are just thrown out that you're supposed to grasp onto. That was ultimately a problem for me, but I also think that, I don't know, I guess there was a huge section of our country's population and the world's population that knew a lot of those proper nouns, that knew all the correct things, that, you know, all that world building did exist for them.
But for you, you were just getting really distracted by them, and so the visual language wasn't really pulling you through the story in the same way. Like you were just getting distracted constantly by not understanding what people were saying. Interesting. Yeah,
the not understanding half of the shit that people are talking about. And I think that if we're really getting into it, I think that there have been a lot of criticisms of this movie. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The critical review of it is not very good. The audience review of it is pretty kind of like almost positive.
Yeah.
But like, to me, I think the fundamental problem with this movie, and I don't know in old reviews how much this was discussed, I think the fundamental problem with this movie is that it is wildly miscast in almost every role.
Oh, wow. Okay. What are the roles that you think are? Because I honestly think, to me, I actually really, it's just going to be interesting because I really love almost, actually not even almost. I love every performance role, and I especially love the.
That's bonkers to me.
I especially love the mocap roles. Like, I really feel like the mocap is some of the most powerful and convincing mocap on the orcs. I mean, it's some of the most convincing, detailed stuff I've ever seen.
I will not disagree with you there.
Okay.
I think that most orcs are somehow more believable and realistic than the human faces I'm looking at. I know that's like really tough to say, but I think that there are some. I think there are some bad performances in this movie, and I'm not trying to come down hard on people because like just about every one of these actors are people who I have enjoyed in other places, but it's just like I think that there's something. I think there's something about this movie where there's a lot of performances that do not connect.
Man, I mean, Travis Fimmel to me in this role, he is really kind of presenting. He's not presenting the audience's perspective as a character, but in relation, I guess, maybe to Robert Pattinson's character in the film The Lighthouse. I think that he is sort of the more modern feeling person in how he responds to everything happening around him. So like how he responds to the magic, how he sort of responds to kind of Gamora as a character, and Khadgar, the young sort of like magician
Garona.
character. I'm sorry. Well, Khadgar is the young magician character. Garona is
Right, but you said Gamora.
Oh, I did say Gamora. That's funny. I've been doing that this entire time. I must say, Gamora and Garona, I've been confusing the two names. Not obviously at all the two roles, but the two names I have been in my head confusing those names.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're both like, like fantasy badass action chicks with like a alien. Like, are they both green? Is Gamora green?
Yes. I
yeah,
think you're
so
right.
they're literally
They
both like
green.
badass action green people with a G. It's okay.
They are both green, but Paula Patton's character, this is a weird thing, and maybe this is like one of the interesting aspects of this. Paula Patton's character, I don't believe is green though. This is getting into the plot, but I don't think she was rescued by Gul'dan, but I don't believe she was actually given the Fel. Oh, no, she is green in the posters. No, she's totally green. Okay, she was given the Fel.
Yeah, her skin is green.
Okay, never mind. She was given the Fel.
No, it's just that, like, orcs are green sometimes.
No, I mean, I think that the orcs that are green have somehow been touched by the Fel. That's the idea.
Oh, I guess I hadn't really realized that.
Yeah, that's like, and that is sort of like one of those things that in the script and the plot, it's not really told. It's only done visually. Like, there's a couple of mentions of, like, other tribes and how they look different from them, and like that's the only difference is some of them. And that's why also when Medivh does his spell in the forest, that's why I interpret all the green sort of like orcs perish, because he's sucking out the Fel from them basically.
Okay, I buy that. I think I'm following that. Yeah. Okay.
But back to the humans. I just because I'm sorry I took us off track, but I honestly I'm not familiar with anything else with Travis Fimmel. I haven't seen Vikings. Haven't seen the film Lean on Pete, which I saw he was known for, or the TV show Raised by Wolves. But I think his performance. Sorry, go ahead.
I watched the first 4 or 5 episodes of Raised by Wolves, and like a Ridley Scott produced android high concept sci-fi show is super right up my alley. And for me to just like vaguely give up on it after 4 or 5 episodes because I just wasn't interested, that show is weird and kind of boring, and I don't really know what it's trying to do with itself. And Travis Fimmel is a piece of cardboard in it, and I feel really bad saying it because like I feel like that dude has a wheelhouse, and clearly like when he was on Vikings, like the praise that he got for it and stuff, he really reminds me of a Charlie Hunnam type. And at some point I'm going to end up being on this podcast defending Pacific Rim and talking about how I can be forgivable towards Charlie Hunnam. But Travis Fimmel, I think, really falls into this kind of like the most boring, coming from a average boring looking white dude, he's just the most boring looking white guy, and I was not able to latch on to his performance, his whole relationship with his son, and watching his son die, and like that final line delivery after he kills the dude and is like,
For my son.
for my son. It's like I felt nothing out of that. And I think part of it is probably because the guy is acting on a green screen and he probably needs as many people to help ground him and feel human as he can. And that when he's acting on a green screen, like, it's the Anakin Skywalker conundrum. It's just like, how can you expect somebody to give a good emotional performance when they're just talking to tennis balls?
I think he is giving a much more emotional performance than Anakin Skywalker was able, than Hayden Christensen was able to give in the Star Wars prequel.
Well, I think he's giving a significantly less emotional performance. It might still be a better performance.
You don't think there's anything? Okay, well, I guess that's where I disagree, because I truly do think, even though I agree with you in the sense that I think the one plot point that it's not that it doesn't work to me, the death of his son and just the development of his son, but it's the one thing in this film that I'm like, I didn't need that. I didn't need this emotional arc, and if it was just presented as a guy who, if he had just lost a child and a wife in that sort of like childbirth, that backstory that it has where his wife died in childbirth.
Right, he already has the grief.
Yeah, you could have just had it be that, and you could have just gone forward with the story. I don't think you needed the son. I agree, but...
And especially because I think that as a plot point, they tried to use the son's death both to like... take everything away from him, quote unquote, but also like kind of show the not necessarily hero aspect of Ben Foster's character, their big mage, the Guardian, and how he was like willing to let his son die. And I guess as a plot point that makes sense, but then also like a scene or two later, they just without any resistance just like have Ben Foster walk into a room and be like, guess I'm evil now. And so like they don't really walk up to the door anyway. So like I don't know, so it doesn't feel like it ultimately was like setting anything up because they just give it to you a moment later anyway.
Interesting. Okay.
And ultimately when I'm talking about why this movie doesn't work for me, I think that it's a lot of the shoe leather. I think that asking people to be invested quickly is tough in so much of the world, especially when I'm not super interested in the human lead. I also personally think that Ben Foster, an actor who I'm sure we're going to like talk about, I don't know what your relationship with Ben Foster is. I like him a lot. Like I grew up with him in like kind of like childhood roles. Like he was on like a Nickelodeon TV show called like Flash Forward when he was a kid that like I watched.
He was in one of my...
He was in like...
first rated R movies called The Punisher with Thomas Jane. He plays like the heavily pierced.
He gets his lip rings ripped out.
Lip rings, nose ring, earrings. Like he has a bunch of piercings. I think he gets like really tortured in that movie. It's pretty gross, but that movie's okay. That movie has its moments, I think.
I love Tom Jane. I have a hard time separating from it. I just love Tom Jane.
And there's that just great fight sequence with him and the guy and like the boiling water. And, it's just amazing.
No, there's moments in that movie. No, that movie committing to being rated R is how it works best.
Yeah. No, Ben Foster's big for me when I was young too. Like I saw definitely things like Big Trouble and like X-Men Last Stand. I guess I'm getting older at that point. I love him. Probably my favorite performance by him is in 3:10 to Yuma. I think he gives a really solid performance in a film that I think is also fantastic.
That was a movie that I initially didn't like very much, that I thought he was the bright spot on, and that movie has I've warmed to that movie over the years.
Yeah. But yeah, I do love Ben Foster. I haven't seen his more recent work in Hell or High Water and Leave No Trace, but I really love his performance in Warcraft.
Yeah, also shout out before we get back to Warcraft. He's also in, I think, a really undersung Bruce Willis movie called Hostage.
Oh.
I don't know if you've ever seen Hostage.
No, I have not.
It is just Bruce Willis is a retired hostage negotiator who gets brought back in for one last big standoff of like 3 young punk kids who like break into a house and take a family hostage. And like Kevin Pollak is the dad of the family that gets taken hostage.
Okay.
And it's like these 2 brothers who are both kind of like young, dumb coked up criminals and their super fucking sketchy best friend, who is played by Ben Foster, because Ben Foster, it's like, oh, you need somebody who just, you look at him and you're like, that guy's trouble. Like, just like, you know, and the movie takes it's a hard R. It takes dark turns. Ben Foster is he is a demon in that movie. He plays like a truly deranged character in a really fun way. So just shout out that movie.
Sure.
I don't think he works in Warcraft. I think that he's wildly miscast. I think his American accent is so strange relative to all the other insane accents everybody else is doing. His wig looks ridiculous, and the moment where he makes his turn and goes bad is played like he's just like casually talking about it in not like a menacing way, but just in this like, it is now time to be bad.
See, that's interesting. It is now time to be bad. I read his performance as interesting because, for one, I didn't think he was the villain of the story. And even when the Khadgar character, who is the character played by Ben Schnetzer. Also a performance that doesn't work for me, but I haven't seen him in anything else, and I'm not going to punch down on that kid. Understood. But like, there's the scene where he sort of burns all the paperwork, and then Khadgar has the talking scene with Travis Fimmel's character, and you reveal that basically to the audience that guy is the bad guy. And I remember in that moment that I still kind of had feelings of like, yeah, but he doesn't seem bad to me. And a scene that actually comes after it is a scene where Paula Patton is sort of expressing the fact that she is actually in love with Travis Fimmel's character. And he really shows...
for a week.
What would you say?
Just that they've known each other for like 5 days or whatever.
Yeah, they haven't known each other long. But I think what that scene is meant to represent is there's still a very emotional and good side to that character of Medivh, the Guardian. And it isn't that he's evil. It's that he has been... What is the word to like
corrupted.
Describe it? He's been corrupted. And I think in that moment, he realizes that sort of like this magic that he's been using... Because first of all, I actually don't think the Fell in this movie is presented as something that is inherently evil. And I actually think the more I watch this movie, the more I think the film is trying to say it's actually the magic has nothing to do with the evilness, and it's the people themselves and their allowance.
And the use of the magic.
And the use of the magic. And in that scene when he sort of drops into the pool and the pool turns green, I think it reveals that sort of like that darkness has been there the entire time. He's been hiding it and repressing it and pretending like it's not there, but it's actually already consumed him. And it's sort of like this moment of like, I can't stop this. It's already too late. Like, I didn't even know until it was already too fucking late.
No, I buy that. The performance just didn't land. and I'm not trying to be hypercritical, but yeah, it's
damn.
Just, and like I said, I didn't love the young mage kid. And
man, he represents
sorry,
go ahead.
I will say, Dominic Cooper and Ruth Negga, who are partners in real life and starred on 4 seasons of Preacher together.
Oh wow, didn't know that.
And were in this before they were on Preacher together, and they're both really, really good on Preacher. I don't love Preacher, but they're both great on Preacher.
Cool.
And he and just so it's cool seeing them play like king and queen, husband and wife in this. And I think that their performances do work. The idea of Ruth Negga and Travis Fimmel being siblings is weird to me. I'm not going to overthink it, but it's weird to me.
Okay.
But I think that weirdly, and I'm gonna have more criticisms for this movie as we go on, but like I think weirdly, that the thing it has best going for it, and I guess maybe this is your side, this is your territory, but I think the thing it has best going for it is actually like its story structure.
Yeah.
like the story that they're deciding to tell that is a really ultimately like tragic story.
Yeah.
And feels like it could be used as like this first act of franchise building, but also could just be this like tragic story about how like the movie's called Warcraft and war just is always tragedy. Yep. And like, there you go. And
I love the tragedy of this film. I really do.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that in my first viewing, like I definitely, and I definitely enjoy this movie unapologetically. Like if I was to rate this out of 10, I'd give it like a 9 out of 10. Like I actually
wow.
think this movie is fantastic. And I think I was enjoying it on a less high bar level when I was watching it the first time. But when I got to the scene where the king basically decides to let Garona kill him and he sacrifices himself, that scene just really made me go like, oh wow, this movie is actually really ballsy in a lot of the story choices.
Shit.
Yeah. And I love that tragedy. I love ultimately the tragedy of Duratan and his wife Draka. Draka is really an emotional performance to me. I get a little emotional in her death scene when she watches her baby kind of float away. Even though it's obvious Moses imagery, somehow it like really...
No, but it's well done.
It made me very emotional seeing that sequence.
And Duratan's death is like surprising and really... it plays on all your expectations of the way a duel would work, where like... the guy is down and it seems hopeless, and then there's like this big final row that gets him safe and gets him into the third act, and it's just like, nah, dude, like this guy is not going to play fair, and he's just going to kill you.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yep. And in that scene also, just to speak really quickly, I think Daniel Wu is the like reigning the best performance of this film in terms of, not even just in terms of mocap, but just like everything he's doing with the way he's like enunciating his words. He is just a monster. And I think Daniel Wu,
it's a really insane performance. It's really good.
It's really good. And it's really just, it doesn't seem like Clancy Brown is being Clancy Brown and he's doing a great job.
Well,
I think, I love him in it, but yeah, Daniel Wu in that scene is amazing. And yeah, I guess that's also one of the things I get behind the tragedy of this story, but it sounds like the story for you couldn't land with because a lot of these human roles you just couldn't connect with. Interesting.
Yeah, it was a thing that by the time I got to the third act, as a writer, I was admiring and enjoying all of the story beats by the time I got to the third act. But I just felt kind of so uninvested and kind of frustrated with a lot of the performances. And I guess part of that is, the direction. Which is weird because I think that Duncan Jones gets some really, really authentic and genuine performances out of people in his other movies. Quick, with you saying Clancy Brown one, I don't really know Daniel Wu from anything else, but it's cool that he's able to give such a great killer mocap performance.
He's a Chinese American actor because I believe he was born in America. Right. But it seems like he's more well known for doing Mandarin language films, Chinese language films.
Oh,
it's Mandarin
cool.
And I think another language. I can't remember the other language, but I think he's primarily known for that. But I've seen him in the most recent remake of Tomb Raider, which was an okay airplane.
Which I missed.
It's a good airplane viewing. I didn't think the movie was that great. He shows up as sort of like a captain of a ship that she's getting transported on, and actually he's probably like, I don't think he's like fifth build. Maybe he's between like fifth or eighth build in it. So he's like a decent character in it. But the movie
like character actor mode.
Yeah, but I actually really like him in a movie that I'll shout out, Europa Report, which I don't remember what I watched it on.
I never saw that.
It's a story of a group of scientists who are on the moon Europa, which is a moon of Jupiter. And it's the one that's sort of like surrounded in a thick sheet of ice. And it's basically they're just exploring the planet for life, and at nighttime they see something sort of like luminescent below the ice that's moving, and it's just kind of like a sci-fi. I don't know if it was a horror movie. I only saw it once. I think it was like a sci-fi sort of like psychological thriller, but I thought it was really cool, and he was really good in it. And yeah, that's the only things that I've seen him in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's this new age of character actor that are the people who really learn how to make mocap work.
Yeah.
And, like the Andy Serkises of the world, but there are other actors who, and like Clancy Brown has always been a really successful voice actor for years and years, video games and animation and stuff.
Mr. Krabs.
But also just, yep. And just great, live action character actor,
Yeah.
He has a couple episodes on Lost that will always be totally iconic.
Cool. Shawshank.
And it's funny, just when I'm thinking in recency, I was watching, my wife and I were watching The Crown, which is a good show on Netflix. And they had like just done like an episode where Michael C. Hall from Dexter played JFK, and it wasn't a very good performance. And like that show is full of British character actors, but not a lot of like American actors. And then we were watching an episode, and in the opening credits, it says Clancy Brown. And I'm just like, wait a second, what is Clancy Brown doing in The Crown? Like, he's like the most like American sounding big American. And I was like, oh my God, he's playing LBJ. And and there's one episode of The Crown where Clancy Brown plays LBJ and has a limerick contest with Helena Bonham Carter, and it is fucking hilarious. It's so good. Sorry, it's a total digression. It's great, but also an actor right now who is really, I think, finding himself in mocap is Toby Kebbell. Are you a fan of Toby Kebbell's?
I'm a fan of Toby Kebbell in terms of I'm a fan of his Koba work in the War for and Dawn of Planet of the Apes films as the character Koba. He's really great.
Dude,
in those
he's
movies.
great.
I kind of
absolutely incredible performances.
I get a little bored with those movies, to be honest. Like I think I've seen them all once or twice and then never really felt like going back to them. But the mocap is
agreed.
The mocap's pretty amazing, and obviously Andy Serkis is incredible in it. But Toby Kebbell in the first two, he plays the villain of the story, and
especially in the second one.
Yeah. I guess you're right. Not really in the first one, but in the second one, he becomes more of a villain, and it's a tragic story. So it's really successful.
Tragic, and it's a really, really moving performance.
Mm-hmm. And also, he was Kong on Kong Skull Island. He was
right.
He did
more
the
mocap
for that and he played a human, and I don't remember the human's name, but I don't know if the
which
movie
is
does.
Also what he did in this movie.
Yes.
Where he plays like an archmage in the third act.
Yes. Who I did not even realize until you told me that was Toby Kebbell. I always just wondered, like, who the hell is that guy covered in a lot of makeup?
Yeah, it's so good. I am like I'm a really, really big fan of his. He got
I even like him real quick in the remake of Ben-Hur. He plays Masala, and I think he's actually pretty decent in that. But sorry, continue.
I bet he'd be a great character in that. And it's
great.
Also funny, he had, in his working his way through the studio system, he was also in Prince of Persia: Sands of Time with frickin' Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yep.
But he was in. Did you ever see Guy Ritchie's Rock and Rolla?
No, I saw that on IMDb when I looked him up, but I have not seen that movie.
It's kind of like a third chapter in like the Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and then Snatch, kind of like multi-ensemble cast, crime, caper, comedy, violent thing. Gerard Butler, Idris Elba, Tom Hardy, Tom Wilkinson, Mark Strong, Tandy Newton, and Toby Kebbell is in it. And it was first time I ever saw him, and he gives such an iconic performance in that movie, and it's a way better movie than people give it credit for. And he's super, super good in it. And then he's also in that early, really, really upsetting episode of Black Mirror.
Oh yeah.
The one where everybody can see their memories in their eyes, and they can project their memories for everybody, and he like slowly, through like anxiety and the ability to replay memories, slowly starts uncovering an affair that his wife had. And it's really, really upsetting. And there's a rapper named Open Mike Eagle who literally has a song called The Black Mirror episode ruined my marriage, and I am convinced that must be the episode that he's talking about. Because it is just so upsetting and so devastating. Like, it's just like 43 minutes of just the worst.
Yeah, I never. I honestly, I let you spoil it because I honestly didn't. I could care less about Black Mirror. I watched the first episode I watched the first episode and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
and I never returned.
It's the third episode of the first season, and
Okay.
somebody just told me like just watch that one and
Okay.
you'll get it. And I
Okay.
like watched it and I was blown away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you watched the rest of the show at all, or?
I've watched like probably 4 or 5 other episodes and I'm really hit or miss on it, but that one episode is just
Yeah.
it's straight fire. It's so good.
The first episode really upset me, and I just kind of was like, content wise, I was just like, you know what? If this
Yeah.
is where they're starting, I don't want to see where they're going.
Yeah, because that's the fuck a pig episode, right?
Yeah, that's the fuck the pig episode.
Yeah, it's a tough place to start the show.
Yeah. And just I guess speaking on actors, the one actress that I guess we haven't spoken about, or actually 2, I suppose, because we still haven't really spoken about Paula Patton or Glenn Close.
You're right.
Yeah, but what is
And
I will say that Paula Patton, for me, I remember having deep love and affection for Paula Patton in the movie Deja Vu that I saw in theaters, and I actually really love Deja Vu, and she's great as that role.
There's something with like fridge magnets, right?
Yep. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah. I have. It was a long time ago.
Oh, that is like one of those bonkers movies. I think it's produced by Jerry Bruckheimer and produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, directed by Tony Scott. And
Is it actually a Tony Scott movie? That's awesome. That's so cool.
It is, and it's great. I actually think it's the premise is so bonkers, but it reminds me of Source Code in a lot of ways.
Right. Kind of like a limited space of time travel idea.
Yeah, and I think and Denzel is just I also kind of watched it recently because in a lot of ways, not in a lot of ways, but in some ways it kind of reminds me of Tenet, just because you have like these. You know what? Actually, I'm going to take that back. I don't know why it reminds me of
I'd
Tenet.
watch Deja Vu over Tenet any day.
Yeah, but I just I maybe it's not like Tenet, but for some reason I just felt like when I was watching it last time, it reminded me in a lot of ways of like the type of story that Tenet is, and Deja Vu I think is a far better, stronger sort of delve into sci-fi that you're not going to really fully understand, but you know enough to go forward with the bonkersness, I think.
And I also think that oddly Deja Vu kind of has that it's such a great example of like they got a cool idea and you got Denzel Washington, and no matter what, it's going to be like a 6 or a 7 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, I think it's one of those movies that's like the argument for why Denzel Washington is just like one of the greatest movie stars of all time.
Yeah.
Because like Denzel Washington like doesn't have 2s. He doesn't make 2s.
No.
If he's in it, at least it's a 5 or a 6.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like Will Smith has been in 2s. Tom Cruise has been in 2s. Like Denzel doesn't make 2s. Can't do it. It's like impossible.
No, even the way no. I mean, every
Yeah.
line reading he delivers, he's going to deliver in a way you're going to be like, yeah, I believe everything you just fucking said.
Yeah. Out of Time, that's probably like a 6 out of 10. Like
That's one I haven't seen, but
it's probably a 6 out of 10.
yeah. But Deja Vu is
And
great. And
Paula Patton's really good.
Paula
in it.
Patton is really good in it. She was also in, I'll mention, Swing Vote, which I've seen, and I thought it was okay. She plays a good role as a television news reporter in that. She's also in Precious, but the big role that I remember her from is
big performance.
yeah. Precious is a big performance, but the big one I remember is Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol. That's the one.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah,
Ghost Pro.
that's
is
the one I
really,
go to.
That's the absolutely, and she's really good in that movie.
She's really good in that movie. That movie is, in my opinion, the best of the franchise. Like that is I think it's an amazing film.
Yeah, I mean,
That's just me. But I enjoy the more fun.
I don't know where I land.
Okay, fair enough.
I think that 5 and 6 each have sequences that could make it feel like the best of the franchise. 6 is great. Kind of feels like it's just all guitar solos though.
Yeah.
And 5 is a little more low key in a fun way, but 4 is incredible. And Paula Patton, I think, is something that's really missing from 5 and 6.
Well, to me, Christopher McQuarrie is he's doing the material really well, and he's making it a spy movie. But Brad Bird has more fun in Ghost Protocol, and the entire way the film is directed, it's very clear that the person behind the camera knows this is from a less serious sort of like TV show, and he's shooting it in a way that he's saying like, hey, this is going to be action, it's going to be serious, and it's going to be spy shit, but we're going to have a lot of fun during this too. And it's like the one that moves the most and is the most fun to me. But I do love the spy mystery of the next two after that.
Yeah, which I do like a lot, and they dive more into that. But like,
yeah, they do.
But yeah, I like Paula Patton in that a lot. I if anybody wants to make like a direct to streaming prequel spy series about her and Josh Holloway, who gets killed in the opening sequence of Ghost Protocol, who's Sawyer from Lost, where they're like lovers. Like somebody give me a prequel series about those two, and I would just eat that with a spoon.
All right. Well, you should work on that fan fiction.
Oh yeah, I'll put together that pitch. But yeah, and Glenn Close is in this, and yes. I guess Glenn Close is about to win an Oscar for a movie that I can't even stand to want to start.
I honestly want to watch it, but I haven't seen it yet. But not only that, she is an 8-time Oscar nominee. So I mean, she is.
Oh, and she's been begging for it.
Oh yeah. Oh, begging? What do you mean begging for it? And just the way she's been picking roles?
She wants an Oscar so bad.
Oh, I'm sure.
She wants an Oscar so bad.
Wouldn't you want an Oscar if you were Glenn Close?
I guess, but it's just, I don't know. It's tough. And I mean, I feel for Glenn Close because she was in this like field of women coming through like the 80s and 90s of like the Meryl Streeps and, the Cate Blanchetts and the Julianne Moores, who like these people who just like, the Kim Basingers who just like had these big, just years and years, of where the Oscars was just nominating them for stuff. And she was always in the conversation. Susan Sarandon, Michelle Pfeiffer, like she was just always in the conversation. And just Glenn Close never landed it. And if you asked most people, they'd be like, well, of course Glenn Close has an Oscar. And it's like, no, that still doesn't. And so the last few years she's been trying really hard. And I get it, but like the Albert Nobbs of it all is it's a little much.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely. I guess. I mean, I hope she wins. I hope she wins eventually. I don't know. I guess I have to watch Hillbilly Elegy to see, but whether or not the
movie looks so bad.
I mean, but whether or not the film is bad doesn't always mean whether or not an actor's performance is going to be good in it, though, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I definitely have seen. Oh God, I forgot the name of the movie. There was like a movie that came out, a Gus Van Sant movie starring Joaquin Phoenix and Jonah Hill. I feel so terrible. It's like a long. Oh, he won't get far.
Don't worry, he won't get far on foot.
Don't worry, he won't get far on foot.
Yeah,
that is a movie that I didn't really enjoy the screenplay, but there's a lot of really great performances in that movie. And even though as a story, I don't know if I was very engaged with that movie. Everyone acting in it is doing they're making really interesting choices. So, I mean, you can have a movie that I think doesn't land and a good performance can be in it. So, I mean, I need to see it. And I think she deserves it. Glenn Close, when I think of her most famous role, I think of Fatal Attraction. And that fucking movie is a great fucking movie. Have you ever seen Fatal Attraction?
I have. She's great in that. She's amazing in Mars Attacks.
Oh, my God. I love her. She plays the president twice, doesn't? Oh no, she plays.
Yeah, who gets squashed by the chandelier?
Yeah,
it's so funny. Oh my gosh, she just becomes like this like dummy. Just
I was like, yes, no, I love that movie's amazing, and I think like the next year she was in Air Force One, which she is equally amazing in, but more of like a badass character.
And also did like the legendary live action adaptation of a Disney movie as like iconic Cruella de Vil from our childhood. That like people like that's such an iconic character that people like almost divorce it from Glenn Close. You know what I mean? They just think of that character.
Yeah. No, it's funny because like I think I only watched 101 Dalmatians when I was a kid, and the live action version of it, and also probably the animated version of it, but. When I think of Cruella de Vil, I definitely still think of Glenn Close. And I feel like I less remember that movie. I more remember like the teaser trailer where she just goes like woof woof, and she like has this like maniacal laugh.
Oh, it's so good.
And then also just more recently, she has kind of a fun role in Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think she got to be on a few more sets in that movie. She got to be on a couple of more physical sets, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, if you can put Glenn Close, John C. Reilly, and Peter Serafinowicz in a room together and make a movie, like, I'll watch the hell out of that movie. I don't even really like the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, but like any of those scenes, it's like, yeah, give me all that you got.
It's. I think Guardians of the Galaxy 1 is a perfectly fine, okay B movie that you can just kind of sit through and enjoy. And I laugh sometimes. I find it's always charming. The dance scene at the end is a little cringy to me, but everything else in it
I agree.
is pretty fine. And I don't know. That's a harmless movie. I enjoy that movie.
Yeah, I think Volume 2 is one of the best Marvel movies, which is weird because I really, really didn't like the first one when I first saw it. And now I've come around to thinking it's fine. But I think Volume 2 is probably like top 5 Marvel
wow.
film.
That's so interesting. I feel like I might have to rewatch Volume 2 then.
It's a great movie.
I feel like
great movie.
I feel like I did not enjoy it.
Doesn't have shit to do with Infinity Stones. It's just about people and their bad dads. It's like it's a good movie.
That's true. I gotta check that out though.
Movie.
I gotta check that out again though. I'll watch that again.
Okay, so also I want to give one other odd shout out in the cast.
Okay.
There's a guy named Ryan Robin, who plays one of like the king's guards. He's the one with the beard, kind of square-jawed beard.
Yeah.
Who basically his biggest line is during the battle when he yells "push" and they all push over the that like big tower or whatever.
Yep.
And that guy's name is Ryan Robin, and he's like a Canadian science fiction TV actor who shows up on stuff like Continuum or like The Magicians or was on that miniseries Ascension. A lot of things that are bad, a lot of things that can be guilty pleasures, but he's just this like actor who is like a big like supporting actor leading man in this genre of TV science fiction, and then they bump him up to Warcraft and he's just like the unnamed guy helping people push over a tower.
Yeah.
It's a totally different context. It's fascinating.
And the last actor, I guess I'll mention, just to be fair to the cast, Robert Kaczynski, who hasn't really been in much that I've seen him in. It seems like the biggest roles.
I don't know him.
Well, he was in Pacific Rim as kind of like the one of the Jaeger drivers who I think is with his dad. And he kind of is the guy who gets in some quarrels with Charlie Hunnam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So he's like the son of the father-son team.
Yep. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I do know that guy.
Yeah, and then also he is in Captain Marvel. He plays he's literally the guy. He's the misogynistic guy who asks her to smile.
Oof.
And those are kind of the two roles that I. And just to kind of speak really quickly, I wanted to say. Oh, sorry. Actually, you go next. I'm about to jump on another topic. Go ahead.
I was also going to change the subject.
I was going to change.
I was going to say, while we're still talking about actors, do we want to try the Kevin Bacon game before we move on to anything else?
My thoughts exactly.
Hells yeah.
So honestly, I think we should stick with our originals of you should still have Willem Dafoe, and you should link your line, and then I'll have Robert Pattinson, and I'll link my line.
Okay.
So, yeah.
For the listeners, just to set it up, our idea is that every week we are going to play a continuous chain of the Kevin Bacon game where we connect actors from the movie we're talking about back to the actors of the previous movie we had talked about, creating a chain all the way back to our first episode where we matched Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe to Kevin Bacon. And if you want to listen to that, you can go back to our first episode. And so this week we are picking from our, luckily, a large cast. So I'm connecting Willem Dafoe, right?
Yeah, I would say Willem Dafoe, and I guess I'll let you go first again, and I can pick.
Okay.
I'll just pick a random name, but I'll try to pick someone who, has a decent. Well, you know what? We talked about her for a bit. I'll do Glenn Close. Let's do Willem Dafoe to Glenn Close.
Wow. Okay. Willem Dafoe to Glenn Close. They're of an age where I would almost wonder if they've been in a movie together. But there's also, I'm not super deep in I don't know a crazy amount of Glenn Close's career, so I'm gonna have to start with a franchise thing she's done. And I think we're trying to say that we would not have it be from this movie, right? We don't. It has to be from a different movie other than the one we're talking about this week, right?
I think that's fair. Yeah, and honestly,
Yeah.
it's probably easier that way, just because some of these actors, I mean, they've been in a decent amount of films, but not maybe like a big sort of like ensemble pieces that are easy to kind of relate back to other actors. Yeah, so let's not do Warcraft.
Yeah. Okay. So, if I'm looking at taking Glenn, ooh, this could be bad. I always brag I'm good at this game.
That's okay.
Glenn Close. Let's forge ahead. I'm gonna go through Guardians because she's in Guardians, and there's a lot of people in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
Willem Dafoe.
If it helps, I mean, we can also go the other way. Maybe it's easier to go Willem Dafoe to Glenn Close.
Well, either way, yeah.
It's difficult, yeah.
But since I just know less about Glenn Close, how would I get Willem Dafoe to someone like John C. Reilly or someone like Vin Diesel is in that. Bradley Cooper is in that. Okay, Willem Dafoe to Vin Diesel. Willem Dafoe's been in a lot of weird franchisey stuff. Man, this is gonna be embarrassing.
How about let's see. So Glenn Close was in Mars Attacks, and Mars Attacks has a lot of actors in it. It has people like Jack Nicholson.
Also that, yeah.
Has like Jack Nicholson. It has maybe other than Jack Black.
Don't help me yet. Don't help me yet.
Okay, fair enough. Sorry.
Okay.
You didn't leave me hanging, so I'm trying not to leave you.
Yeah, I know. But you can come in and try to steal from me in a moment.
Oh, true. I forgot I could do that.
Glenn Close is in. I really just want to use Guardians because there's so many people in that, but there's also so many people in. Willem Dafoe. Geez, I am freezing up. I'm gonna have to edit around this.
That's okay. I'm like trying to write out
Willem
now.
Dafoe to Glenn Close. Weird other roles Glenn Close has had. Well, she's in Hillbilly Elegy with Amy Adams. Amy Adams has been in a lot of stuff.
That's a good idea. I'm like trying to write this out too.
Willem Dafoe go? Willem Dafoe. Jesus, this is bad.
Well,
Has Willem Dafoe ever been in a movie with Liam Neeson? You said Willem Dafoe was in John Wick. He was in the Spider-Man movies. I am totally freezing up. This is terrible. Have you been able to find something between Glenn Close and...
I was honestly trying to get from Glenn Close to maybe like Speed 2 Cruise Control just because Willem Dafoe was in it. So I was like, okay, Willem Dafoe, Sandra Bullock. What has Sandra Bullock been in? But I only could think of like The Blind Side and the other Speed, which is with Keanu, and maybe Keanu is in a movie with someone that Glenn Close has been in. But I don't know.
Oh no, there it is. You did it.
I did.
You did it. So so you can do it in two. It's Willem Dafoe is in Speed 2 Cruise Control with Sandra Bullock,
Right.
who is in All About Steve with Bradley Cooper, who is in Guardians of the Galaxy with Glenn Close. So Sandra Bullock to Bradley Cooper to Glenn Close.
Whew. All right. Well, I guess that's me. So that means I'll be doing Robert Pattinson.
I was going to challenge you to Ben Foster because he's been in a lot of stuff.
All right. He has been in a lot of stuff. So let me just remind myself. Ben Foster, 3:10 to Yuma is the big one. But X-Men Last Stand might be something worth looking into. Oh, dear me. Okay. You know what? Let me try working the other way. So Ben Foster, yeah, he was in 3:10 to Yuma with Christian Bale. Christian Bale to Robert Pattinson. It's always so difficult to like think of other movies that Robert Pattinson has been in for some reason other than the Twilight films. Remember Me, which I've never actually even seen.
That's got Pierce Brosnan in it. Twilight also has, Kristen Stewart or Anna Kendrick in them.
Right. Anna Kendrick. Let me just write down her name. Anna Kendrick was in Remember Me? No, Anna Kendrick was in Twilight.
Twilight,
which was also
and
with
Ben Foster.
Robert Pattinson.
You could,
Pattinson, Anna Kendrick.
Russell Crowe or Christian Bale from...
Right, from 3:10 to Yuma. So Anna Kendrick, I know she was in a movie with George Clooney, George Clooney was not in anything with Russell Crowe, but I must be able to get from George Clooney to Russell Crowe. Maybe let me give that a try. So Anna Kendrick was in Up in the Air with George Clooney. Let's see. I'm doing this ass backwards way, but let's see. Up in the Air with George Clooney. So George Clooney, getting back to Robert Pattinson now. Or maybe this is also just, I'm like getting off in the weeds. Maybe there's a faster one that I'm missing here. Okay, let me try the Ben Foster route. Ben Foster was in 310. Oh crap, actually, hold on one second. Yeah, this part will definitely need to be edited around.
Oh yeah, this is bad.
This is really bad. So Ben Foster to, let's say, Russell Crowe. Well, yeah, to Robert Pattinson ultimately, but let's say Ben Foster to Russell Crowe in 310.
And I can make that jump.
Damn it. Oh, well, if you can make that jump, I guess that means you should take these points or do it. I think you're going to be answering these for me every time, but...
Shit. Maybe we'll reformat this.
Give me one more sec.
Yeah.
Give me like 30 seconds.
But there is one person between Russell Crowe and Robert Pattinson.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. It's an actor who... he and Russell Crowe were in a 90s crime noir together, and he was in a weird post-apocalyptic movie with Robert Pattinson.
Oh, I don't know. See, this is... You know what? Go ahead. It's sorry, listeners. This is another episode where Isaac's going to answer this for me.
It goes to Guy Pearce, who's in The Rover with Robert Pattinson, and
right. I never saw
LA
The Rover.
Confidential.
I never saw The Rover. Okay. Yeah. See, this was okay. Hopefully, I'll get better at this because Robert Pattinson was a difficult one for me. I will say, in terms of like I've seen.
Yeah, he has a weird filmography.
Well, it's just that I've really seen the ones that I think. Actually, I don't even know if some of his stuff is the most well known. He has a very interesting filmography. Like he was in that. Wasn't he in a movie called Life, which is kind of like a sci-fi thriller? As well? High Life. Yeah. Like that movie looked really good to me, and I still haven't gotten around to seeing it. Like he really is in these movies that I'm always just like, oh wow, that's an interesting choice. But it takes me a while to get to them. He's making a lot of weird moves. He makes a lot of weird moves. Well, thank you, Isaac, for once again answering. That is like 4-0, I guess, in your corner since you have.
That's our. We're gonna figure out this Kevin Bacon game. We'll figure out a way to make it less terribly painful.
But I want to.
Okay, so
I want to journey back.
Yeah, where do you want to go?
I want to journey back to the film right now. I want to because I remember you were saying something about you were talking about the acting and how the acting really doesn't work for you, and that just sounds like something that I think I responded to one way, you responded to a different way, and sure. I do feel it's cast well, but it seems like you don't feel it's cast well, and in that same way, you were saying how you didn't feel the directing was very up to par as well, but I guess with
some of the actors, I think.
Okay, fair enough. I really want to talk about the directing of this movie because I think the directing of this movie is really, really awesome, and it relates. First of all, I think the introduction to this film before we actually get the title card, so all the way up to Draka giving birth when they've come through the portal, I think is one of the coolest cinematic sequences I've ever seen in 3D, and I did experience this for the first time on the big screen, and that entire thing, and like seeing the gate like on a giant screen in 3D open for the first time, and that huge shot just like panning up, I really feel like Duncan Jones knows so well how to capture mocap and the visual effects in this movie that it feels completely effortless. Like there's a sequence where Duratan is talking to Orgrim, I believe is the name of his friend character, who ultimately will betray Duratan and the clan that they're a part of. They have this sequence where they're like talking about the Fell and how it's just kind of like killing the land that they're in, and the film literally communicates that by going from one close-up shot and having the camera, instead of cut back and forth, it pans to just reveal the gradual death of like the landscape in front of you. And it's just like, I'm pretty sure he shot that. This film was shot mostly in a studio in Vancouver, Canada. But I think that sequence and the sequence in the canyon were shot in this place called, and I wrote it down. It's a place in Chile. I didn't write it down because I'm a fucking asshole. Maybe I put it in the episode notes. I feel bad now. Oh yeah, I did. Torres del Pan, I believe National Park is how you pronounce it. And
okay,
it's just, I love, because in that shot, I'm sorry, going back to the shot of Duritan talking with Orgrim, I can see the visual effects, I can see the mocap, and I can see the background, and it all just blends together seamlessly. It's all just really, I really feel like on an effects level, this movie is really a success. And I would shout out Gavin Bocquet, who's the production designer, Elizabeth Wilcox, set decorator, Mayes Rubio, who's the costume designer. I think makeup, art direction, all of the production of this film is so deeply trenched in lore, and I really love it so much.
Yeah, and especially in the way that those things match and work with the CGI and the mocap and stuff like that. I think that there's some moments that look like not wonderful, and like sometimes with like the lighting or like the shininess of armor and stuff like feels kind of oddly false. But I think that you're right that really on the vast majority of everything, the real world stuff and the mocap stuff is integrated in a way that I think is ultimately successful. Like I was expecting my criticism of this movie to be that it's just like a bunch of Gumbies running around, and like that's not my criticism of this movie. Like I think that the visual effects of this movie are, like you can see that it's already 5 years old.
Yeah, but
that doesn't mean that they weren't accomplishing a lot in what they did.
3D is kind of one of those things where unless you have a really great TV too, like when I rewatched Avatar recently on Blu-ray, and it's definitely not the theater experience of seeing that movie, because in the theater, if you're wearing the 3D glasses and you're watching it on that big screen, you're far more immersed, and I think you can get away with a lot more. And once it's down to the small screen, it can kind of look bad. But I feel like, with this movie, the effects really hold up, for me at least.
I agree with you ultimately.
Yeah.
There's some wide stuff of like them at like their castles and like those tops of the towers and stuff like that that all feels very, very like Star Wars-y green screen room stagey for me, that I find like wildly intangible. But most of it I find surprisingly tangible.
Yeah, and I really love, and I guess one more thing I'll say about the visual effects is I really love the design of the magic, the design of the runes and like the magic spells, and like when, oh my god, there's so many, I really do think that there's so many cinematic just moments in this movie that are frames that are beautiful to me, but they're all effects. Like it's like the shot of Ben Foster on the hill summoning lightning, and his eyes like light up red, and I'm just like, I get goosebumps like watching that scene, because for some strange, and I mean it does kind of look like, I admit that I am a person that loves video games. I'm a person that loved Dragon Ball Z, and it does kind of give me those same type of vibes of like this sort of like power source that you're harnessing before you can actually like send out your attack and stuff. I really love just the timing of everything like that.
Seeing stuff like that in what is ostensibly depicted as like live action, like I know it's a lot of mocap and a lot of CGI, but seeing stuff like that depicted in live action, I think that for a certain era of kids will always be kind of dope.
Yeah.
Like I think about like that final fight scene at the end of Matrix Revolutions where they're flying through the sky, and it's like, even as like I wasn't much of like a Dragon Ball Z kid or anything, but like see, like no one had ever really done that with like real people, quote unquote, flying through the sky and punching each other and winding up and blasting craters in the ground, and it felt like an anime Dragon Ball Z fight that that is, even if it feels like CG or whatever, you're like, this is dope.
Yeah, no, I really do love it. I love when the demon shows up in Warcraft. He's great at the very, very end, the reveal of sort of like the monster demon. I love that shit. That shit's so cool.
Yeah.
And then in terms of,
it is,
go
and
ahead.
Well, just I was thinking about it in terms of like these worlds of like video game adaptations where you're taking a thing that exists in a CGI world with a story that you're kind of interacting with, and then trying to put it into a live action narrative story. It's rarely particularly successful, I think.
I definitely,
you know what I mean?
I'm definitely of the opinion that, and I mean, you would probably disagree. I think this is the most successful video game movie I've ever seen at giving me a sense of the world that it exists in, at the same time that I feel like this movie gives me a sort of, I was thinking about something that I said, which is I sort of almost hold this movie in regard to the Lord of the Rings franchise, and I've rethought that to kind of place it in a different wording, which is I think Warcraft is the younger sibling to the Lord of the Rings franchise, where like everything's faster, it's more effects driven, whereas the Lord of the Rings is more artistic in sort of like a physical design that they're doing with that. And the Lord of the Rings films are incredible and amazing and are definitely better films, unarguably, than Warcraft. But there is a part of me that thinks I would rather watch this movie than a lot of the Lord of the Rings films, because it's faster and it gives me a lot of the same emotional beats that only really the first Lord of the Rings gives me. Like, I really only feel emotional at the death scene of it's Sean Bean. It's Sean Bean at the end of the first Lord of the Rings film, Fellowship of the Ring.
Sure.
That's the only time I actually feel emotional towards any of the characters in the story of the Lord of the Rings.
I'm deeply in love with all Lord of the Rings. I was raised on the books. I love those movies, but I agree that like Fellowship is far and away, I think, the most successful and accomplished and just really kind of incredible and touching movie. Fellowship is absolutely amazing, but it's also that like, those movies, the way that I said that like there is in Warcraft, there isn't a whole lot of chance to like see the characters just kind of be be people, it's
True.
always just like talking about a thing and throwing out proper nouns and like,
yes. Lord of the Rings breathes more.
It's the exact, like we're going to spend the first 40 minutes on some dude's birthday party that ultimately is not really relevant to the rest of the story.
You're absolutely
that's how
right.
we're going to do it. And
yeah.
And so like asking one thing to be the other is pointless because we already have the other.
True.
Is maybe a good way to look at it.
True.
Because you're right, this does just kind of pound through it in terms of the world building and the plot and then the emotional beats. And
it does. But it almost gives me, and I mean, once again, I think it's just a preference thing. Like it gives me more fantasy imagery that I really just I eat up, like the lightning wall, the demon at the end, even the golem. Even though the golem is quite silly, like I actually really enjoy the design of the golem and how he ends up defeating the golem in the end. Like I thought that entire thing was just so much fun, and I just kind of like, when I think back to memorable moments in Lord of the Rings, I think of Gollum. I think of and it's funny, I said Gollum and now Gollum.
Yep, there
Gollum
you go.
is the memorable thing that I think back to, because that was like a really amazing mocap performance that was just, that to me is the most memorable part of those films in terms of like a visual thing that I always, not in terms of story, but in terms of like a visual thing that I always think of when I think of Lord of the Rings. I think of Gollum. I think of kind of the huge sets near Mount Doom and just the great sort of like production design in all those movies. Now I'm just getting lost on a tangent. I mean, I love both the films so much. It's just,
right,
for some reason, I think like the breakneck pace of this one is just something like, for example, like I can put it this way. I can never go back and watch the theatrical cut of The Lord of the Rings. Like, now that I have the extended cuts, I'm never going to go back and watch the theatrical because I'm just going to be missing information. And so I think it also just relates to the fact that Warcraft is kind of, for me, it's a faster consumption. And maybe that's just me being...
right, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I can get kind of a lot of those same feelings, and I can just consume it a lot faster with Warcraft. But the Lord of the Rings are such perfection in terms of production, direction, in terms of just filmmaking. They're so perfect. I'm not taking anything away from those films.
And that I think it's also even more interesting how you're saying like the younger brother of Lord of the Rings, because there also is like the Hobbit trilogy that sometimes like the crazy dependency on visual effects and stuff in the Hobbit trilogy is something that I think Warcraft accomplishes better than most of the Hobbit.
I think so too.
So it is just kind of weird that it is kind of like doing that a little better. And I think that, I don't know, like the career, because you're talking, and you're really complimenting the directing on a lot of this. You know, the framing, the handling, the visual effects, the knowing how to shoot in preparation for visual effects.
True.
And I think that Duncan Jones, while I'm sure, there's Hollywood nepotism, being somebody's famous son, I'm sure things help, but like he's one of like the few recent filmmakers who has kind of followed that trajectory where it's like, I'm going to do my small indie movie and then I'm going to get something that's like 40 million, 50 million. And then I can level up to something, this movie had $160 million budget.
Yep.
And like, I feel like nowadays, even just a few years later, the difference of, because, Source Code was what, 2011?
Yes.
So like, so you take like that, the leveling up of like somebody from the late 2000s to 2011 to 2016 versus somebody leveling up right now as a director where it's like, you make an indie movie they like, congratulations, here's $200 million for a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
And like, you're going to have no control over the visual effects or the pre-visualization or how you just get to work with some actors and try to put your flair on whatever dialogue scene you get. And the idea of like, they don't expect you to know how to handle that much money, so then they just take all that control away from you.
It seems,
and
like
I feel
that
like
could be
that
the
happens
case.
with so many like indie filmmakers who like their biggest movie was like 5 or 10 million, and then they don't have that kind of middle step leveling up the way that like Christopher Nolan had Insomnia before he did Batman Begins. That's kind of like a more middle budget thing.
Yep.
And I think that Source Code got to be that for Duncan Jones.
Yes.
And I think that that's I think that really is what probably made him as prepared for this as he was.
I mean, I definitely think Source Code on all levels is a better film than this one. I think that's his best film by far. I think it's a highly emotional film, but also it's a very sort of like I said about Deja Vu, it's a very high concept kind of fantasy that is a little bonkers when you listen to the explanation, but in the way it's presented in the direction, it's really successful.
And well contained within its parameters and its world and its rules.
Yep. And I think it definitely it must have been great practice for this, because it seems like those same things he's doing in this world, and it's a really confident direction, I think. And I don't know anything about the production of Warcraft. I know that at one point, like it's been in development for a long time. I know Sam Raimi was once involved in directing it, and
our boy.
But I mean, he is a bold choice director, and it feels like Duncan Jones at least stuck with the boldness of the choices, in the sense that like they were just like, hey, we're just going to charge forward. We're just going to use these really like nerdy encyclopedia terminology from the games, and if you're not catching up for it, hopefully the visuals will let you catch up to it, and if it just doesn't work, it just doesn't work. But they just kind of go for it, and I think it's a very confidently directed film, and there are aspects to the script that, like the son character as he's developed, and I'm trying to think of other things, but to be honest, other than the son, most of the dialogue,
that's really a weak point.
Yeah, that's really a weak point. And other than that, though, like, I really feel the dialogue is so, in going back to what I said before, Duncan Jones and I guess Charles Levitt as well in writing the screenplay, they just drop us into the world, and it feels like the dialogue is authentically what these people would be saying every time they're saying things. Like, the only time it felt hokey was the son. And every time it was like, son, father, I'm a soldier. Like, those things were, I was just like, you didn't need that.
You're all I have.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I thought his performance was, I actually really think Travis Fimmel once again has an emotional performance in this movie, but that's just me. I think he pulls off a performance that I find both funny and emotional. So I think it's a success in my mind.
That's kind of insane to me. But I mean, if it connects with you, it connects with you.
Yeah.
Like, that's dope.
No. I mean, but yeah, so I think this is I guess an excellently directed film. I think it's definitely in comparison to just video games that have come out in the past. I'm sure you haven't seen this one, but Sonic the Hedgehog is definitely also a movie that I think, although is I wouldn't rank it as high as I do Warcraft. I think it's a successful adaptation of a video game. And I really, I kind of enjoy it. I have a soft spot for it.
I haven't seen that movie, but I'm gonna guess that that's a stay tuned on this show because I feel like I'm not gonna like Sonic the Hedgehog.
That might be a stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right. That one character is a weak point. And okay, so I have another question about kind of like the world building of this and the way this game presents itself. Is, do you ever play Dungeons and Dragons? Do you ever play D&D?
No, never really have.
So I have like an adjacent. I play D&D. I'm part of like a campaign that I got into for the first time, in my late 20s. And we do it, every couple of weeks to a month. And I like it a lot, but it's, still a thing that's kind of like only like a small part of my life. But I like playing D&D a lot. And in some of the weirdest ways, and I don't know if this is like a compliment or not, but like this movie felt like I was watching a D&D campaign. Like it kind of, in the good way, has all the different characters but also everyone kind of just like states their backstory, like the way that like when we introduce, they're like, "What? Okay, D&D campaign, everybody introduce yourself," and it's like, "I'm a mage and I did this," and it's like it just feels like so kind of like the clunky awkwardness of like people sitting around a table who aren't gonna get every line delivery correct, kind of even reminded me of that in my personal opinion.
That's interesting.
And so it like truly like felt almost like a game of D&D in a fun way, but also I think that could be a little critical, and that's me being a little critical of it.
No, I think it's presented. First of all, this movie I want to state it made $225 million in China, which is the majority of the money it made in theaters was in China. And I do feel that this film is a very simple story because of the fact, and the dialogue is also presented very simply in that sense, where like everyone kind of like introduces themselves, gives you who they are, and then pretty much the rest of the dialogue is just plot oriented. Like it's just charging forward. Yeah. And I think that simpleness was to sort of make it translate to a wide international audience. But I also feel that like to me, it's kind of beautiful in its simple story, because ultimately it really is, to me, the only theme of this movie, and I think it's a strong theme, but it's not like a complicated theme. The theme to this movie is life isn't black and white. I said earlier that I really do think this film is trying to say that this fell magic, and I know nothing about the games, but my interpretation from the film is this fell is just magic that can be interpreted any way. And Glenn Close, her Alodai character, is basically telling Khadgar, hey, listen, evil begets good, good begets evil. Like, they're both the same thing. And if you actually want to be a powerful guardian, you have to master both. And I really do just like that this entire film, and even though, it's a dumb quote, from light comes darkness and from darkness light, it's a theme of, like, the world's not black and white. Don't look at orcs and people as these separate entities. There are delineations in every group. And I think that that's kind of the theme that they're trying to express, is just the world exists in gray, and like we want that Medivh character to be evil, but he's actually not that evil. We want
right,
Garona.
And he ultimately does a final good thing before he dies, and
yeah, and we want Garona to be good, but she's forced to do something evil. Like I do think that there's that theme is the thing that, even though it's a simple theme, and even though the rest of the story is also simple, it's powerful because it's presented in this very simple, almost easy to digest way for me. Like, it almost becomes more powerful than if they were trying to add some sort of weight to everything that was happening.
I do like that personal approach. I do like that a lot.
Yeah.
And I will say that, as that it should be noted that when we're talking about, like, the creative influence and who the writers were and stuff, that, like, it was very much a thing where, like, this the initial version of this script that was written was about, a group of a human Stormwind empire that was invaded by orcs.
Yep.
And that Duncan Jones' take on it was like, this also needs to be about orcs running away from their home and their own destruction.
Yep.
Like, this needs to be a thing about both sides. And I think that ultimately does help it a lot, and is definitely the empathy that, that if there's something to Duncan Jones as a filmmaker that really, I think, has defined his version of sci-fi, is that there's like a lot of strange empathy to it. He likes to create slightly unreal or slightly like intangible situations and then let you feel deeply emotional about people in those situations. Yep. Something like Source Code, or something like Moon, both of things that are probably kind of underseen in the general populace. And I'm afraid to give out spoilers on those movies, because like the way that those kind of evolve and the situations that, if I were to describe to you, seem so absurd, yet in the moment feel so emotionally cathartic in those movies, that I think is really successful. And that's clearly straight out of him.
Yep. And I do relate more on an emotional level also to the orcs in this movie. Like Durotan, Draka,
Totally.
Those are the characters that you almost feel more emotionally towards, I think. And when you're at when we're with the humans, I think I'm more swept up in the adventure of it. And when I'm with the orcs, it's sort of like the drama and the melodrama and sort of like...
Right, and the characters.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean...
Also, just quick shout out. Quick shout out. The score for this movie is pretty flippin' good, and it's by Ramin Djawadi, who did like the music for Game of Thrones and like Westworld and stuff. Like, he's a pretty big deal composer now, and he's good, and he's a good choice for something like this.
I think it's Ramin, only because I like looked up a YouTube video and I don't know, like the newscaster pronounced it Ramin Djawadi, but you got the last name correct. But I believe it's Ramin, and yes,
the
I
harder
agree.
word, yeah.
No, it's cool, but like, yeah. I just wanted to be clear. I'm sorry not to throw you under the bus.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
No worries. But and I might be wrong. Who knows? But yeah, I love his score in this movie. Although I will say, in rewatching these films, in this film, the score really gets me pumped in the opening, and it really gets me pumped at the end. And I don't remember much of it throughout the film, and maybe that is a compliment to the score. But because I do. Honestly, even in the fifth watching of this film with subtitles on, I do still feel emotional. And I'm sure that has something to do with the music also like sweeping in those moments. So it's there, and when it does pump up for like the war sequences, I'm like, yeah. And then like when it's sort of like in the background, just sort of like adding the emotion, it's there as well. But I think this and his music on Westworld, I really love. I love his music on the TV show Westworld.
And undeniably, whatever criticism people have of Game of Thrones, the music on Game of Thrones, it kills, man.
Killer.
It's so good.
No, it's definitely his most known work is some of his best, definitely.
And okay, and so I guess the only other thing that really I think is an important thing to talk about this movie is the weird kind of like the legacy and relationship that it has to the franchise of Warcraft, and in this way that like it ultimately feels like this was really attempted to be a franchise starter, almost in the sense that like it's like a prequel to characters in the next two Warcraft games. I think that like one of the main characters of the second Warcraft game is just the baby that got Mosesed down the stream, you know, and that like they're telling their own story, but then you realize that like, oh, it ends with like the main orc dies and his wife dies and his child is sent down the stream and is picked up by someone, and now the king has been killed and our main human character has like become the king. And it feels like this is like such... It is its own movie, but it also creates a lot of avenues for the franchise as we already understand it to exist. Yeah.
And I'm bummed because I really do wish, like I find Garona's story, of now being kind of like this guilty person who wants to side with the humans, but is sort of like forced back to the orcs. I love...
And is trying to make peace.
And is trying to make peace. I love the idea of a sequel about an orc that is born not born among humans, but raised among humans, like the Moses story, and is ultimately like the person who will bring them together. Like, I'm kind of bummed we might not. It doesn't seem like there's plans to make a sequel to Warcraft, unfortunately.
No, which seems to be part of this this weird relationship that Universal Studios has had with like the modern franchise era, right?
Yeah.
Like, this entire new paradigm that Disney has created with their Star Wars and their Marvels, these things where it's like Disney's like, okay, I'm going to release 7 movies that each make $1 billion in a year, because they did that in 2019. That happened. And like that's this insane box office paradigm and like franchise building paradigm that we've been seeing so many people just like do everything in their power to keep up with.
And Universal has both had, I think, like success with I mean, I would say success with the like unexpected success probably for them with the Fast and Furious franchise. Like that is definitely a modern franchise that did not seem like it was going to go anywhere, and now it is like one of the biggest franchises moneymakers in the world. Like it definitely is huge for Universal in terms of like their properties. And then of course you have on the other end sort of the there was the Mummy franchise with Brendan Fraser, and those are a success on some level, I think. But more recently, and in response to kind of Disney and Marvel, they tried to reboot their sort of classic Universal monster movies, starting with, I think, Dracula Untold, and then the Tom Cruise...
Dracula Untold...
Go ahead.
That was like their first try at it.
Yeah.
And they were like, we're making a monster universe.
Yeah.
And then no one liked it. And then they're like, hey, we're starting this monster universe, and the first movie's The Mummy. And everyone's like, what about Dracula Untold? And they're like, first one's The Mummy. It's got Tom Cruise in it.
And now, of course, we have, I mean, in some way, it seems like, because Blumhouse's relationship with Universal, he seems to make a lot of movies with Universal, and he most recently produced, I think, The Invisible Man. Probably not most recently. I'm sure he produces so many films. I'm sure there's something that he's released more recently, but The Invisible Man was the big theatrical release that I remember from. So
does that also mean that, like, the Conjuring movies and Insidious and all that, is that all Universal as well?
Insidious is. Conjuring... You know, I would assume that Conjuring was as well, but let me just see if I can find that out.
Yeah, because that is a hugely, hugely successful franchise.
Yes. Oh my God, it brought me to like an 1896 French short film. Hold on.
No, look at the Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's Warner Brothers.
Okay, that was okay. Thank you, but I believe Insidious is. I thought I saw Insidious on there, but yeah, I believe Insidious was.
Okay, but yeah, so that's Warner Brothers. So again, that's like they're easily their most successful franchise has been Fast and the Furious, and they've been trying to do these like spin-offs and stuff, but then also like Fast and the Furious was like 4 or 5 like underdog movies, and then as soon as it became like a flagship franchise, all the movies started to suck.
Yep. Yeah. You mean just all the movies in general, or just all the movies of Universal, or?
Or no, I'm saying all the Fast and the Furious movies.
I see what you're saying.
Like, you know, that franchise was like an underdog franchise, and then as soon as it became a big moneymaker for them, like I guess by 6, which is still a decent, fun action movie, and then 7 is like, you know, 7, 8, Hobbs and Shaw, like these are these things that have just been bringing in so much money, and all 3 of those movies are really bad.
Yeah, I honestly don't enjoy them much. Yeah.
Yeah. They're really, and
They're
I mean, maybe that's a hot take in general, but those I think are bad movies. Those last 3 Fast and the Furious movies just don't work. And like, I think that they're still making some money and people still like them, but like, I don't know. It's just, I think that Universal's relationship with the big franchise game right now has been a tenuous one at best.
Yeah. I mean, they do some work with like recently, I think the entire Unbreakable franchise with Split and Glass, that's still Universal, I believe. And those movies are Unbreakable is the strongest, I would say, even though I do have a soft spot for Split. Glass is not good. And then they also worked on the Bourne franchise, which, I mean, those are also incredible movies. And then from my childhood,
Well, but also totally died on the vine.
What do you mean?
Like they, you know, the last 2 of the 5 Bourne movies basically just don't exist. Like, they made no cultural imprint. Nobody saw them. Nobody saw the Jeremy Renner one or like the Jason Bourne. Like, who saw those movies?
I think that ultimately, Bourne Supremacy and Bourne Ultimatum.
Oh, great movie.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought you were saying that you didn't like those 2. So you just mean after the initial 3.
I'm saying 4 and 5.
Oh, yeah. 4 and 5 are not great movies. No.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I said the last 2 of that franchise doesn't exist, and you thought I was talking about 2 and 3.
That's true.
That is how little 4 and 5 exist.
Actually, yeah. That's absolutely right. I think I watched...
That is how little those movies exist.
I think I watched the Jeremy Renner one in a hotel in Poland. That's how I watched that movie.
There you go. I watched it on an airplane in a hotel.
Yep. It was an airplane hotel. But the first 3, okay, so yeah, that's really funny how I did ignore them. The first 3 Bourne movies are great. And then the only other things that I put on, like, they're obviously the classic franchise movies that they've been a part of. Jaws, Jurassic Park, An American Tail, Land Before Time.
But like,
those are the older stuff.
But the modern resurgence of Jurassic Park has also been bad movies that I guess, like, those movies made crazy money. So like, who the hell am I to say, that it's like unsuccessful, but those aren't good movies.
No, I agree with you. I definitely don't think Jurassic World, I can watch Jurassic World. The next one I really just can't watch, which is hard for me to say because I think the director, I believe his name is J.A. Bayona. Bayona.
Yeah.
He's great, and I love a movie that he's made called The Impossible, which is a really, really powerful movie. But that
gave the world Tom Holland.
Yes. Yeah.
For better or worse.
Yeah. I mean, for better. He's a good Spider-Man.
Okay, so I feel like we're reaching the end of the conversation about Warcraft.
It seems like it. Yeah. I mean, we can talk about other video game movies, but I think honestly, in the discussion of video game movies, it's probably just Warcraft is I think one of the most successful of them, and maybe like Resident Evil and the original Mortal Kombat movie are kind of worth mentioning, and those are kind of, to me, the ones that I say are worth mentioning.
Yeah, both of those franchises from Paul W.S. Anderson.
Yeah.
And I think that the Resident Evil franchise is some like really good, just insane bullshit that is not like tied to its own video game franchise, but yet is oddly like indebted to its own myth making, like within those movies in such a strange way. But they really commit to it.
They do. No, and there's some that I think are entertaining, and there are some that are just plain old nuts. But yeah.
And I think shout out to the first Silent Hill movie for not having a good script but for really successfully capturing how creepy the feeling of going through Silent Hill would be. That movie kind of pulled that off.
There's some horrifying imagery in that movie, for sure.
Yeah, Pyramid Head will always get me, I think.
Pyramid Head and like barbed wire, like isn't there someone who gets like kind of like disemboweled with like a barbed wire thing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, from the inside.
Yeah, it gets gross. It gets pretty gross.
Yep. But yeah, the video game movie adaptation game is a very, very strange and fickle thing. I mean, because Warcraft itself is the highest grossing video game adaptation, and that's a movie that like a lot of people don't even think about anymore. So
yeah, I do.
I think that kind of just shows where it all lands for everyone.
Yes, it's true. And I think that hopefully, I don't know. I mean, hopefully we'll get a really great video game adaptation. I think Warcraft is a really great video game adaptation. That's me, but
yeah, right.
I hope for more, because I do think it's only recently that they've really been able to, like Paul W.S. Anderson, you're right, in the 90s and early 2000s had a handle on how to sort of adapt a video game movie successfully. But now it feels...
With what they had available, yeah.
Yeah, but now it feels like with Sonic, which is directed by Ben Schwartz, I think is his... Oh, God, I feel so terrible. I'm going to look this up real quick.
No. Ben Schwartz didn't direct that.
Oh, you're right.
Ben Schwartz is
the voice of Sonic. Oh my God, I'm terrible then. Who is the director of Sonic? I wanna shout them out, because I do think that Sonic the Hedgehog is like a very what would you say? In the spirit of Sonic, It's very, very good. Directed by Jeff Fowler. I wanted to shout him out.
Right.
And I really do think
that guy.
Yeah, and I really do think Jeff Fowler, and who hasn't actually, I thought he had directed more, but I guess he hasn't really done much. He was the visual effects main. He worked on Where the Wild Things Are, I guess, in the visual effects department. But other than that, he only directed one animated short. So he's new to this. And I think that Sonic is one of the stronger video game adaptations, and I think Warcraft is the best video game adaptation in my mind, and also a pretty decent film. Oh, and also a great film, I would say.
My favorite video game movie is not a video game adaptation. It's just Wreck-It Ralph.
Nice. Yeah.
Because that movie rules.
I was going to say also, like, I mean, maybe this is a weird one, but Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle is also just a...
I haven't even seen either of those.
It's just it's a fun, you know, I think the first one, I haven't seen the second one. The first one is fun, and it honestly just... It makes you feel like you're playing a video game, and it sort of has fun with a lot of the different expectations that you have of that. Like, I think it does a lot that it is actually quite, what would you say? Quite entertaining, I guess. I'll
and probably pretty smart and clever with the way it uses the video game world.
Very much so, yeah. That is a video game adaptation that's not a video game adaptation, but it feels like it has the spirit in its heart, yeah.
That's dope.
So Isaac.
Yeah, what's up, Chris?
What do you love this week?
You know what I love? I love Search Party.
Oh, the show.
The show Search Party. Of the fourth season came out on HBO Max maybe a month ago, and I hadn't gotten around to watching it. And it is, if anyone doesn't know it, it's now an HBO Max original. It stars Alia Shawkat and John Early, John Reynolds, Meredith Hagner, who was most recently in Palm Springs. And it's like it's like a send up of kind of like selfish millennials, of a bunch of kids who a few years out of college, a girl that they vaguely knew in college goes missing, and one of the people in their crew kind of like becomes obsessed with tracking her down, even though they weren't actually even friends. And the show kind of spirals, and you know there's mystery and this and that, and it's a great, really, really funny, really smart, very cynical in a lot of ways. A lot of the characters are really, really unlikable. And by the fourth season, it has really let the plot evolve and go to some really, really dark places. And, it's been, almost a year since I got to watch some episodes of it, and I've been eating it up. I love it, man. I love Search Party.
It sounds like every season, definitely there's sort of like a twist that happens that kind of very much changes the trajectory of the show and the characters.
Yeah. Well, just they often do a really good job of like having the main plot and then having a B plot that will organically eventually be like the thing that creates kind of the cliffhanger at the end of the season that sets up what the next season is going to be. They do it really well each time.
Yeah. I haven't been able to get into it only because, like, honestly, it goes to one of your points. When I watched the first episode, I just couldn't stand everyone I was watching. Like, I couldn't find myself wanting to spend any time with any of the people on screen. I just literally kind of just had this feeling of like, nope, I don't like these people. I don't think I'm going to like where they're going to go. And I just kind of like, after I watched the entire episode 1 and I stopped.
I mean, it is fascinating how insufferable they are willing to let some of their characters be. And that like there will be these supporting roles. They have a lot of good meaty supporting roles of people who come in for just like 2 to 4 or 5 episodes a season. And that like as soon as you get these new supporting characters, you just end up like liking and feeling bad for all of them because they are crossing paths with the characters that we have been following. And I personally enjoy the absolute hell out of it. It's just
I think there's definitely something that can be entertaining about that if you're in for it. But I definitely was just like, man, these people are just like giving me.
Yeah, that is the thing that, I mean, you'll get to the end of the 3rd season, you'll be in the 4th season, and it's still just like these fucking people.
Oh my God. All right. I might check it out.
It's a great show. It's created by like young filmmakers who had made a movie called Fort Tilden, I think it was called. And then they were in the writer's room on one of the Wet Hot American Summer shows, and they pitched their idea to Michael Showalter, and he helped them develop it, and he's kind of like a co-creator on the show. But they're really, it's like their names are Sarah Violet Bliss and Charles Rogers. Damn, nailed it. And nice. They like write, and they both co-direct, and they're really kind of just like this brain trust behind this show, and it's really good, man. I love it.
Cool. That's really cool.
And it also gets me, like, it always makes me wonder, like, hey, Chris, what do you love?
Isaac, this week, I really love Dave's Hot Chicken, which is a new chicken place.
Oh, man, that's fantastic.
That has just popped up, like, literally across the street from me. I don't even need to use a crosswalk. I can just illegally jaywalk if I want to, which I do.
Hell yeah.
And it's really simple. It's
Rebel.
like 3 items on the menu. Got double tender combo with fries, double sliders, which is just tenders with bread on top of it and like coleslaw in between and fries. And the last combo, I think I don't even remember what the last combo is, but I don't need to know.
Doesn't even matter.
Doesn't even matter because those are the only 2 you need. And they just have like Reaper, very hot, hot, medium. I go with medium.
Hell yeah,
because
dude.
I'm a penis, and my partner Natalie goes with hot because she's a badass.
Is it all just like tenders, or are there any bone-in wings option?
Just tenders.
Interesting.
It's only in the greater sort of like Los Angeles area, maybe outside of that in a couple of areas in California, but it seems like it started as sort of like a pop-up thing in the greater LA area. But yeah, it's there's only one other sort of like fried chicken chain place that I've had better tenders at, and it's a southern chain called Zaxby's. It's like this fast food southern chain that it's in Florida, and it's fucking delicious. But in California, we have Dave's Hot Chicken, and I've had it 4 times in the last 2 weeks, and I just cannot get enough of that shit. It takes a commitment. Like literally, we order it online. They give us a 35-minute wait time. It's never 35 minutes. But at 35 minutes, I go to the restaurant, and there's a line you have to wait in before I can even get to the front and tell them, like, my online order name, and then they go. And sometimes it's been there.
So, like, people know.
There's always a group of, like, 10 people outside waiting for their orders. Like, I will say the one thing that they might be struggling with is they really have to find, like, some sort of like text message system to like let people know, because like every time I just always show up, there's always people just waiting outside, because if you show up and order it there, they'll just tell you like, oh, it's going to take us 35 minutes to make you your 2 tenders, which is like on some level I'm always like, okay, that's crazy that it takes that long. But then you eat it and you're like, oh, it's worth it. Okay, it's worth it.
Well, but also that it probably only takes 10 minutes to cook the whole thing. It's just going to also take 25 minutes for us to get to your order.
Yeah, true. That's a good point. Yeah. But it's crazy, and I definitely, but I love it. It's that's why I keep going back to it.
I'm so jealous of that.
It's so good.
Oh, man, that sounds great.
I know. I'm sorry. I kind of figured it. When I found out it wasn't really like anywhere else but California, I was like, oh, shit. Well, you'll have to come back to California someday, and I'll get you some Dave's Hot Chicken.
I guess I'll just have to come out and visit you. Yeah. That sounds tragic.
Oh, it's tragic out here in LA. It's truly tragic.
Well, that does sound truly delicious, and now I'm jealous, and now I kind of want to find something like that for lunch.
Okay. But I think that about does it.
Yeah, that does it. Thank you everybody for listening.
Please comment and like
and subscribe and rate us. Ratings on iTunes and everything they mean a lot. It's really no trouble for you guys, but it does a whole lot for us. So anyone who's willing to, we really appreciate it. Hit us up on Twitter. We'll have that link in all of the information. And because we want to hear from you guys. We want you guys to pick your take on Warcraft. We know that it definitely was kind of like a decisive, or there was a lot of opinions on it. So we want to hear where everybody lands.
Yeah. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to my host, Isaac Leggett, for being an amazing speaker.
And thank you to Krista Moulis for being my host and my friend.
Yes. Indeed.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I love you, man. I love you all.
We sign off. Goodbye to all.